All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Emma, one of the librarians here at Rockland Public Library, and we are so thrilled to be hosting tonight's event. I'm going to start off by first noting a couple housekeeping things. People who are joining us in person, I should have grabbed one, but I have these little roving microphones for when we get to our question and answer period so that people on Zoom can hear your question as well. And then people on Zoom who are joining us, I can't remember which camera it is. I think it's that one. You are welcome to type your questions into the chat and we will answer them during the Q&A period. But please keep your cameras and microphones off for the duration. I want to note the next couple events that are coming up at the library. Next Thursday on March 30th at 6 o'clock, we're going to be hosting a free film screening of one of Alfred Hitchcock's early films, The Lodger, a story of the London fog. Which the director called one of the first true Hitchcock films, which should be pretty fun. And then the following Thursday, April 6th at 6:30 p.m., we're going to be hosting John Anderson, who has just written a book about his grandfather, the Captain Anders Anderson, who was a Maine schooner captain and sailed out of various ports throughout Maine, including Rockland. So that should be fun. And I think that that's it for my housekeeping. So I'm going to introduce tonight's event, in particular, Pat Weber, who is a longtime puppy raiser, as well as a retired Guiding Eyes regional manager, and who will be talking to us tonight. So welcome, Pat.
Hi, I started raising in 1991 and I was teaching school at the time, had a golden retriever, and she was just the model citizen. So I was sure I knew everything about raising a puppy. We might have to take her out for a minute. Yeah. I raised my first Guiding Eyes puppy and I found out how little I knew about raising a Guiding Eyes puppy. These are purposely bred dogs and they're bred to be very smart, a little bit naughty or willful because they're going to have to make decisions for a blind person for safety reasons. So the blind person says forward, the dog sees a manhole cupboard open, they have to have enough initiative to not go forward. They may also be corrected for not going forward because the blind person has no idea and they have to hold their ground and go, not safe. So it takes a bit of persistent kind of temperament to be able to do it, as well as just overall confidence. So all those confidence things are built up over the time that we have them as puppy raisers. They give us a dog that's fairly confident, but we have to filter that to being a good citizen as well. So that's the part that gets a little tricky. Same thing with house manners. You've got a dog with a very strong food drive, like every Labrador does. You've got a dog that's pretty much a party animal. They're very, very driven to have fun. They're very willing to please. But given if you don't set boundaries with them, they can find trouble. And as a young puppy, it's because they don't know that a shoe was not a dog toy. They don't know that the couch is not a dog toy. All the things that they're meet are things that they have to learn are not theirs. So we do this by a way of limiting their options to get into trouble. We start off with a pretty sterile environment. They get to play, but none of those non-dog toys are in their environment. We also have a leash on them in the house at first, and we keep the leash on to prevent them from running off with a toy because we don't want to start the catch me if you can game. So it's just a matter of setting boundaries early days. And that's how we get a successful dog. So growing a guide dog, and this is our mission is to create dogs for visually impaired or blind people, to give them greater independence and ability to get around the world, give them greater dignity and freedom and mobility overall. They can move at least twice the speed as they can with a cane. So being able to get places is so much easier with a dog than it is with a cane. So a lot of people are really, really fond of that. Guiding Eyes was started in 1954. So we have a long history. We have put out about 10,000 guide dogs since the inception, which is a lot of guide dog teams. Hi. And all these guide dogs are free of charge to the graduates. There are about 10 schools in the United States. We are one of them, one of the bigger ones. There are like five top large schools that have a facility, a kennel, dorms for the graduates. And our school also works with people with multiple handicaps. So we also may have a deaf-blind person or a person with stability issues. So all those things come into play, which we're pretty proud of. A puppy is not born as a guide dog. They are developed into being a guide dog. So the role of a puppy raiser is to help them meet their full potential. Not every one of them is going to become a guide dog. Some of them choose not to. And it's not because of something that a puppy raiser has done. We've offered them every opportunity to get there, and they're just not cut out for it. Just like every child is not meant to be a doctor or a lawyer. It's like it has to be something that fits their basic personality. There are about 7,000 graduated teams. There are 1,000 active guide dogs that graduate, 165 guide dogs placed every year. We have over 1,400 of our volunteers. Our program is run primarily by volunteers, which is why the money goes into getting the dog up and running to give to the graduate. It's all done. All our money comes from either there's a fundraising and estates and things like that, that all those people do that know how to earn money, raise money. And there are about 150 employees. Oh, look at that. I could have just done that the first time. You could have read it yourself. This is the Canine Development Center, and this is where all the babies are. And this is why we have so many volunteers. You can get a volunteer job here, massaging 2-week-old puppies. You can get a job here working with a litter of puppies, teaching them how to go over a little bridge and upstairs and sitting on the ground and letting them climb on you. And you do that like 3 times in your volunteer slot. And I can tell you those positions are pretty quickly snatched up. That's in Patterson, New York. And it used to be an old farm, and they bought the property. And it started when I first started raising puppies. There was one house that was where all the admins kind of stuff happened. And then there was the kennel. So everything happened in a much smaller state. We built the big Canine Development Center we have now. And there's the studs wing and the broods wing, and there's Brood Hill, and there's a whole outside area for them to play. There's a wooded area, I don't know how many acres up behind, that's fenced in for the broods to go and run and play. And then the studs will go up at a different time. And they just have a blast there. Because our broods and studs have to be physically fit, because we feel that it helps them create easier babies. So more live births. If the people that foster the broods are studs, so for instance, if Kobe were deemed stud worthy, he would have to live within a certain radius of Patterson, and they would bring him in every time they needed to use him. And then he would live with the family other than that. And they had to promise to walk him 3 miles a day. So these are 2 litters, and they're very young, as you can tell. Some people find it interesting. They're named by the alphabet. So with the first litter of the year is an A litter. So all the puppies in that litter are A's, and then B's, and then C's. And they go through the alphabet about 3 or 4 times in a year. And they don't use Q every time. They don't use X, maybe once. And it's got to be a small litter because there are very few names. And it's all systematically figured out. They've got the names now in a computer, and it basically spurts it out. And the litter, a large litter. So sometimes they're large litters. Those are all black. And then Maria Lazaro, she's been with Guiding Eyes forever. She kisses every puppy before they leave her care. She swears they all remember her when they come back. 7%, or does it say 8%? No, 7% of our dogs are chosen for the breeding, to be used for breeding. And they take the best of the best. Mostly, it's all done genetically. And they determine, they have what they call an estimated breeding value on each puppy. So they've already done all kinds of temperament tests by the time we have them. They've looked at every characteristic through the time that we have them. Plus they're started in New York, and they've done all kinds of tests. They come back, and a dog may be labeled a breed eval dog. And what they do is then they go through more tests down there, every medical test you can imagine. They've been able to detect a heart, what's it called? Tricuspid valve dysplasia. It's something that's a genetic characteristic, but they can become a guide dog if they have this, a mild case of it, but we don't want to put that back into our colony for breeding because it's genetic. So things like that are all part of why we have such a great colony of dogs. They also do all the hips and the elbows. They also do multiple scans for their eyes. They can determine if they're going to have, we just find this retinitis, something or other, that they can determine that early on, if a puppy genetically is going to carry that. So those kinds of things are all done. They work with Cornell and Penn State very closely to do a lot of the genetic studies that they do. Our Labradors, yeah, the oldest colony. And that's why it's so good for genetic study, because we have such a closed colony, meaning that they've tracked every dog that's come in. Doesn't mean that we breed incest kind of breeding. It's all tracked really closely. But when they bring in another dog, then we'll sometimes bring in a disease, and then all of a sudden they can start to determine where it came from. Some things you can easily get rid of, and sometimes you can't. So those kinds of things are all tracked. And mast cell cancer is one that they've been working very, very hard on studying. We only have a very small percentage of German Shepherds. We don't have the magic formula for our German Shepherds. We always seem to run into issues with either temperament or health. So we get a few out there. A lot of graduates are now really wanting them because people don't reach in to pat a German Shepherd like they do a Labrador. So they're not as distracted by everyday life. Our German Shepherds are a lot more Labrador than you'd think, except they still might be slightly reactive barking, alert barking, but not always. More cute pictures. So the pictures on the bottom, you can't see the coloring well. Those are black and tan Labradors. It's a recessive gene in the Labradors, just like the chocolate is a recessive gene. And if you breed two dogs that have that recessive gene, you get that. You get the black and tan. So usually when it happens in our colony, we know that we have it back in the lines, and it just happens to be they breed a yellow with maybe a black or a yellow, or it doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden you get these black and tans. They look a lot like a Rottweiler, except the tail's a Labrador tail. All the body characteristics are Labrador. And so when any of those pop out, there are people that just are dying to raise one. I personally don't want to, because you get so much attention, and it's already a lot of attention when you're trying to walk your dog. It's just like, ooh. And plus nobody believes you anyway, because the majority of the people have never heard of a black and tan. But they're very cute. So this is my ultimate love. I've loved this job. She's massaging the puppy, and she's got her on the lap on a towel. So she massages one side, and then she does a little roll with the towel to flip the puppy over, because you have to do both sides to make sure the puppy's equal when you do the massage. And you do these little tiny circles on their ears, and then you do the mouth, and then you do the down the sides, just this. It's very, again, they tell you exactly what you're supposed to do when you do this. It's not just willy-nilly. It's Labrador that are going to be guide dogs have a lot of hands-on. we want to do everything in our power to make sure that they're comfortable with that. Not every dog likes to be touched. And with a blind person, if I'm up here and ask my dog to sit, and the only way, if I'm blind and I ask my dog to sit and they don't, I mean, if they do or they don't, the only way I can tell is to put my hand on the dog. So that's how I can tell if my dog did sit. So they're touching them a lot. They're touching when they find out they're at a restaurant, where's my dog? They put their hand down, they miss 10 times before they hit the spot that they want. So they're very used to, we want them to be very comfortable with that. Hygiene care, the blind person is doing ear cleaning. Some of them do nail clipping that have some vision, but it's not generally usually done by a family member. But nail clipping and just they do a massage with the puppies as well. And part of that is to feel the warm spots. They might have something going on. They might have a lump or a bump. So the more comfortable your dog is with it, the better. Am I roaming too much? And this is just to show that black lab doesn't always have black puppies. Yellow lab doesn't always have yellow puppies. The one on the right, black lab, and she has 2 yellows, very small litter. Those puppies are usually larger when they come out. But developmentally, they end up being the same overall. They just start off larger. Again, that's just your genetics back from high school. Ultimately, we always estimate for 7 puppies per litter. That would be our best case scenario, but the broods do not always cooperate. So this is their introduction to solid food. Our dogs are weaned earlier than the average dogs because our mothers get tired. And they start to get teeth, and just for the efficiency of everything that happens down there, so they get introduced to gruel early on. So they're all making sure each puppy gets enough, and they make dirty faces and adorable pictures. This is the beginning of crate training. We want our puppies to be comfortable in the crate, and they line up a whole row of crates and all the puppies are popped in. They actually have a crate tower too, so they're on top of each other. And then somebody sits there and documents each puppy, how long they're down, when they woke up, were they able to self-soothe back into the crate, and then they're given a color rating of red, yellow, or green. So we always look for green in crating, even though it doesn't mean when the puppy comes to your house, they're gonna be great. Sometimes we get, it's just, but they have the ability, I should say. And these are the baby stairs that they start to practice on. Somebody made those for us. There's special height, but very little. And they practice going up and down. This again is a very fun job to have, I think. And there's a little slide and the wiggle bridge. And then more puppy kisses. You just can't help it. I love that picture. This is the puppy getting a little extra support. He's out in the play yard, and what the volunteers getting them to do is to follow her. So it's the beginning of an exercise we call Follow Me, which is trying to instinctually get the puppies to learn that we are the source of good things. So they carry food, and the puppies say, "I'll be your friend, I'll be your friend," and they all run along. And you notice there's a slope in that was built on purpose just to help their muscles develop as well. And then they have a little baby tunnel and a wiggle board. This is the first experience with a harness. We call this the turtle. This puppy is going, "What the heck is this on my back?" So they tend to roll onto their back and they can't figure it out. Some of them will immediately get up and be just fine. They start off with no handle on it. I think the picture on the bottom, you can see there's a wooden handle on it. There's a difference between body sensitivity and harness sensitivity. Harness sensitivity is where the handle comes down on their back, and the puppies can't figure out what that is sitting them way back here when the thing is on their body. And the dog I have at home now was released for this. What he would do is every time the handle hit his back, his bum went down to the ground, and he did this really embarrassing crab walk. Looked like he was going to go to the bathroom, and it took him forever to finally, they adjusted the handle and they did a lot of work with him. They brought him into training. And he could walk, he could do the work as long as it wasn't stressful. The minute they started to do traffic training where the cars drive right at them, and he has to make a decision to back up so the person doesn't get hit, he's like, I'm done with this job. This is over my capability. And he was right. It was a good choice.
So how old are the pups when they're out there with the breed that handle?
We do it here when they're, that puppy is probably 4 weeks old. And it's just put on and then taken off, put on, taken off. It's not left on. And we kind of note that the reaction. And it's part of, at 7 weeks, they have a big test where they put something on them to see how they'll react. And that's really documented. You know, a puppy might be released at puppy program for that. You guys, if you want to put we can pop them in my truck if we want.
Well, she's gonna try one more time and then we're gonna put her back.
Okay.
I'll park right here.
Okay. I think we're gonna have this struggle. We co-raised this puppy. And so she spends some time with me and sometimes with them. And when she sees one or the other, she's like, no, I want that one.
Thinks she likes you.
Is this the most adorable puppy you've ever seen? I raised this puppy. His name was Andre, and he was known as Andre the Giant. It's only because there were only 3 puppies in the litter, or 2 puppies. So now they're being microchipped from the first one. His toenails are being clipped. Whoops, sorry. And he's being weighed. So I love the way they weigh them. If you've ever tried to get a puppy to stand on a scale, it's like, I think we should do that with some of our older dogs. Works really well. And then they're getting ready to go screened and cleaned. So they're getting ready to go to their puppy home. And there's the puppy raiser. And I think she fell in love. All right. Any questions on the first part?
How old are the pups when they're like?
It's between 7 and 8 weeks, close to 8 weeks. Some of it depends on rides and everything else we can find, because everything's down in New York. So sometimes we're always looking for how they're going to get up here. Or we also have puppies that go to Colorado, North Carolina. So they're kind of all over the map. What are we looking for in a puppy raiser? We want your puppies to be part of the family. We don't want them to be a snob and think that they're a special citizen. They need to be part of your family. We want to teach good social skills and good house manners. Social skills are learning to greet people without jumping, or in a Labrador, young Labrador's case, mouthing. They tend to mouth people, and just basically have good manners. House manners are not getting on furniture, not stealing food. Stealing food is one of our biggest ones that we have to be so careful of, because once a Labrador learns that, it's practically impossible to break that. It's like the genie's out of the bottle. So we work hard on house manners all around, teaching them to be calm and quiet in the house. If you have 2 dogs, we don't want them wrestling all the time. We want them to be able to be quiet and calm together. We want them to be able to play nicely together. They're in the house, which is sort of a jaw jousting kind of thing. You're just kind of just lightly playing. What else do we do for house manners? Door manners, so they learn that they can't exit it. Like if the door is open, they don't just dart out. So they always sit at the door and wait for permission to go out. That would be another one. Classes and assessments. We have classes twice a month, and raisers attend those in the Belfast area. And assessments are done 3 times throughout the time you have a pup. So it's 4 months, 10 months, and 13-ish months. Expose the puppies to a variety of experiences. When they're babies, it's as simple as grass, sand, pavement, dirt, every kind of texture on their feet that you can imagine. It's about going and sitting on the shore and watching the waves come in. It's walking someplace where they have different new smells. It's not about going into Walmart every time. It's all about the little things that we do. And as the puppy ages and matures and you have a better connection with the puppy, then it starts to be that I go up to Rennie's and I go to the doors and we go in and then we come out and that was today's outing. Or we go to the bank and we go into the lobby or the ATM machine. The puppy waits calmly while you get your cash out or whatever. So it's all little baby steps. Everything we do is done in a thin slice because we always want the puppy to say, hey, what are we doing? Not, uh-oh, now what are we gonna do? It's the whole attitude that we want to see with our puppies, that we're looking for them to be just enthusiastic about learning. We want it just to be always upbeat and happy. And if it's not, it's probably not a good time to do an outing. So that's when we have to make sure that I've gone places, got in the car, got the puppy out, they're bouncing off the end of the leash because all of a sudden the wind's blowing and the leaves are blowing. And I say, yeah, I think that was about enough for today. Go back in the crate, leave the back open for a few minutes, and then we go home. So it can be frustrating at times, but again, they're puppies and they're babies, and you need to kind of watch how they're feeling about everything. And to give, you have to be able to give the puppy up when they go into training. And the number one question I think every one of us gets from people is, how do you give them up at the end? And my answer is always, I cry a lot. And then I get to see where the puppies go and the full circle, meet the graduates, and what a difference it makes in their life. They all keep in touch for the most part. I have a couple that I don't hear much from, but for the most part, I've got a good connection with all of them. I even was fortunate enough to have one in retirement. When she was 10 years old, she was retired from her job, and she came and lived with us for the rest of her life, which was just like the most special thing. It was just really incredible. So it's just I can't even explain to you the amount of emotions that go into it, because you work so hard to get the puppies where you want them to be. And there's this real sense of pride when they leave and go off to college and do well, but you still continue to worry. Edie just had her dog go off. She hasn't heard anything yet, which is always the hardest part, that first, because there's mostly what's happening during this first stage is she's settling in the kennel, and she's doing a limited amount of training. So the report would be mostly that. So did you get a postcard yet? No postcard. That's Zephyr. Oh my gosh, we'll have to talk to her. They are anywhere between 14 and 21 months when life is normal and it's not COVID and everything else going on. 14 is a young dog. It's still pretty immature. I like it when they're closer to that, 17, 18 months. That seems to be for most of them. The girls mature faster. So there's times that the girls could go in before the boys, but not always. So this is our training program, and it's specially designed for us. It's called the Successive Training and Enrichment Program. And it's about making training fun and keeping things simple at first. So you start off with your puppy always finding the right answer. It's sort of like with a little kid and you want them to just build enthusiasm for learning in general. You make things easy enough so they can always find the right answer, and they start to feel really smart. And then you up it a little bit, not enough to drive in frustration, but enough to make it, a little more challenging. And so we call this thin slicing. So an example of that would be teaching a dog to sit. We start with a step one where we have a cookie in our hand, and we take the cookie and draw it, have the dog's head. We're trying to get her head to follow the cookie back. So they rock back to get the cookie and they sit down. So then we say, sit, yes, here's the cookie. So it's a lure. You're basically luring the dog to do the right thing. And then the next step is, once the dog's accomplished that, we do step two, which is I use a hand and verbal signal. So I use sit, and the dog puts their bum on the ground. And the second, I actually do it the second before they're going to get there. It's that intent of it's going down, because the whole processing thing takes a second. And then it's sit, and then you say the word yes, and then they get the kibble. So now they've started to learn the word, they know what the word means, so now you can incorporate it that way. But prior to that, you could start with this, sit, but they don't know what that word means at all. Eventually they'd pick it up, they'd figure it out, but it's just a slower process. So this makes them less frustrating and more fun. Then we build duration and distraction. So now I'm going to ask you to sit, same thing, but I'm not going to give you a cookie every time. Now I'm going to ask you for a sit and something walks by, or I'm going to wait 5 seconds and then I'm going to ask you to down. And then I'm going to wait a little bit and then I'm going to ask you to stand. So I'm going to put multiple skills together before I release you or give you a cookie. So now what you do is you up the amount of things they have to do before they get that food reward. At this stage, we also start to use real life rewards. So it's no longer you always get a cookie. We want them to not think that food is the ultimate. It's the ultimate, but there are other ways they can be rewarded. It might be sit and I'll let you free to go eat your dinner. You sit, I'll let you free to go out and play in the yard or whatever your task is. So it just starts to be the real life and there's no cookies involved then. So it starts to be, they start to process that. Any questions on that? So this is just a bunch of pictures of practice. So the first one is the soccer player and the dog's in a sit. So she's just trying to get the dog to stay in the sit while the soccer ball goes by. You can see it's a slightly older dog. You try to gauge the distance. I wouldn't have, if I were going to have Robbie in my hands, the soccer player would be out there somewhere outside. It wouldn't be that close. So you have to figure out where we can find the right answer. And then the other one is working on craning and relaxing, just being calm when other things are going along. And then we took that on the ferry to, where'd we go? Not Martha's Vineyard. Block Island. Yeah, that was a very fun day. But this is 3 of the puppies and just on the ferry riding out. And then the top one was in an event. But they're just nice and calm together and they can start to be closer together. And this is just hanging out at a park and hanging out at the airport. So again, a lot of what we have to do is do nothing. It's my least favorite thing to do. I struggle with this. But if you put me someplace fun with a bunch of other raisers, then it's a little more fun to do. The airport one is fun. This is the kibble challenge for Vail. Those are all Charlie bears. And the puppies aren't allowed to take food off the floor. So we start with a simple drop treat in front of them. And then it escalates to you doing their name in kibbles. And they don't take them. They wait patiently. You do give them kibbles from your pouch along the way to help them know that I know you're there and I'm going to give you kibbles. Nope. Those go back in your pouch. Yeah. And then the drop treat exercise also gets morphed into the drop tissue, the dropped tennis ball, the drop pencil, anything that falls on the floor. And this was just another outing where the puppy was learning patience. He was told to stay while we were getting the boat ready, and he had to wait there until we were ready to have him board the boat. Actually, it was for me to take a picture, but. Yeah, yeah. This is our famous kissing booth. And this is a dog in the kissing booth. And we always, you do this at fairs and things like that, where people will give a donation if they want. And the puppies can move out of that area if they want. There's a pen behind it. But they all love to do it, but they can't jump up. So they're more than willing to give lots of kisses. And then we practice the school bus. Starting lessons when they're young. So a young girl her dog's name is Puxay, and he's learning food bowl manners. Even at this point, we were using this right at 8 weeks old. They'd start to learn not to leave the spot when you put the food dish down. There's no commands and it's all learned by trial and error. And then the other one is giving them time to figure things out. Frog. This was by somebody's swimming pool. Play can be work. So granddaughter playing tug of war. For her, it was a lot of work. That Labrador knows how to pull good. And then work can be play. So this is a raiser teaching her puppy to follow me, where again, like they did in the kennels, it's teaching the puppy that following you around is a really good thing. Again, more settling. This was at a bus stop. I think there's a way to go back. Don't know how to do it. Backspace. Yeah. And then just puppy play. We do let the puppies play. We do, it has to be appropriate play. We do have puppies mostly play with a toy in their mouth so they don't bite on necks and faces and create hot spots and other things. And then this is another young raiser taking her dog into Home Depot. She's got her backpack on. We have cleaning supplies in it just in case of an emergency. Yes, it's hard to give them up. A year in the hands, a lifetime in our hearts. So that's puppy raising. Any questions on puppy raising? I'm not going to go into training. There is one, well, there's the questions. And then some people want to know, what do they do in training to train a guide dog? So I can bring Fred out. So Fred has the harness on and the handle is, the puppies are always on the left. Almost always, there are exceptions. They also have a leash on at the same time that they hold underneath their finger. And they give the dog directions to go forward. And you, as a handler, have to pause and not go forward before the puppy because they need to learn to pull out. And the dog goes forward. And we've done this under blindfold before, and it feels like you're shot out of a rocket because all of a sudden you can't see where you're going. The dog seems to know where it's going. And you feel like you're sort of like, I get quite dizzy because I'll like cross my feet a little bit and all of a sudden, you know, you're walking a little crooked. And they'll stop at any lumps or bumps and they'll follow the path. Any step up or step down, they stop. So that's where the targeting comes in. They're taught to target changes. So a change in elevation or surfaces, it might be from carpeting to linoleum if it's a new place. They're also taught to target things above their head, which is the harder one for a dog because it's not going to hit their head, but they have to know how tall the human is so that they don't bump their head. They have to also look for obstacles. So if they're walking down the sidewalk and, you know, there's a display out in the middle of the thing, they have to know how to go around it and figure out the best route. So they have to, that's where that decision-making comes in, where they have to decide, do I go on the inside or go on the outside? I watched one of my dogs working. I was just following them because she wanted to work the dog and I wanted to watch. So we were going up the sidewalk and we came across a place where somebody had parked an additional car in the driveway. Must have been an event or a party or something. So it was over the crosswalk. And it was really close because they were trying to make sure their car wasn't in the road. They also had a little pickety fence along the edging sort of thing. So Dove came up and she stopped, and Mary Beth has no idea what she's come across. So what she'll do is she'll say, hop up. And Dove's like, got to give me a minute. And I didn't intervene at all. You know, does she go out in the road to come around it? Or does she estimate that she can go in front of that car and fit through? And eventually what she decided to do was, this was the route of least danger. So she went forward and then it was a left. And then Mary Beth had a sense of where she was. And she had kind of instructed her, but when you watch a dog do that, it's the most incredible thing. It's like, how did you know that? How did you know that was the best way? Just incredible. And sometimes the plows, they don't always clear the combing in certain places. So it's like a dove being raised in Maine, she was used to snow. So Mary Beth got her in January, and it was one of those wild and crazy winters in Albany, New York. And she'd just go right up over the snow, snowbanks. And Mary Beth just learned to trust her. That's the easiest way,
So is there, verbal communication versus line?
Yes. There's different cues. So they would say forward. They also will say left or right if they want to go in that direction. And it's some fancy footwork they have to do. And then they head in that direction.
Stop. Dog stop.
The dog stops pretty much when they come to an intersection.
Walk down.
Or a curb. So things that have made the life of a blind person more difficult, they took out curbs and they put in the bubble kind of thing. So now we target to those. Most of the dogs know that, the bubble thing. But again, in the winter, those will sometimes get covered up. Electric cars, they can't hear them. So you're at an intersection, and this was very freaky when I did this under blindfold. You're at an intersection and it was like 2 cars and 4 cars. It was heavy intersection. And they said, listen for the traffic coming, this direction. And then you wait until the next time it does that direction. So you don't try to go that time, because again, you're just kind of getting them, and you stand there and wait, and then you'll say forward. But if there's somebody turning right on red, or if there's somebody that, again, has an electric car that they didn't take into consideration, they'll start off, and the dog then has to have enough sense to back the person up. So they just go straight back to keep the person safe. Some of them will cut the person off, like at a drop off at a train station. They'll sometimes do that as well.
So there's like a dance. Man is given to go forward, they go forward, and they not, depending on whether it's safe.
It's safe, yeah. And that's the pressure of this job. That's why we can't have a dog some of these really soft, squishy kind of dogs that are golden retriever-ish, like the one I have at home right now. He's just too sweet to be true. So he would do anything for you, like most Goldens would, but at his own detriment. He builds stress, because he just wants to please so much. So you need a dog that has enough gumption and confidence in themselves, but also able to separate that too, when it's appropriate and when it's not. So it's a tricky balance. It's kind of like the Wall Street of dog world. It's really intense, especially in the city. I love seeing videos of dogs in the city and how they get through traffic. I got to follow another graduate. We're going through, I don't remember what city we're in. And she knew that she had to get to the curb. So she just parted the seas. It's like everybody's just jumping back. But she knew where she needed to be. And she's basically, get out of my way. I need to be right there. And people were pretty good about it. But
So they're being trained together in New York there, but when the dog and the person returns to the home environment, how does the dog, who's navigating? So does the dog learn a prescribed route, like maybe going to the bank or down to the coffee shop?
over time, they
talk to them by a seeing person?
no,
No?
by the blind person. The blind person has to have the ability to navigate, because they need to have, we call it mobility training. So they have to know how many blocks it is and how many left-hand turns to get to that. And most of them come from a cane first. And so they have to know how to do that first. And then the dog may override some of it, but that's where it gets really tricky for a blind person.
So truly blind, and that's taught to them by a seeing person. They would learn how to go and how many blocks. And where to
Exactly.
go, and then
Yeah.
they basically would they would be trained.
Give them an idea, yes.
And then the dog just aids them. Someone has to have a sense of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And it's the blind person's responsibility to know where they're going. And that same dog that it was watching her walk, you know, as she had the deli she went to, the hairdresser, the bank, and so they'd be walking along, and she'd tell them, we're going to the ATM today. And she, by that time, you know, again, you're 8 years into this relationship, she's like, oh yeah, I know where we're going. And she'd just head off and pretty much had an idea. But there are always obstacles. At one time, the dog got a correction and she was basically trying to veer her away from something. Mary Beth thought she was going to go scavenge. So she like gave her a call of correction. And so it was like, but you have to have a dog that can go, just being cranky today, you know, and carry on. No, it wasn't the case. The dog was right. Mary Beth was wrong. But she has to go by her best interest. One of her later dogs wasn't from Guiding Eyes, a different school, but she got, somebody was backing out of their driveway and didn't see her. And so the dog was trying to back up, but in the process, she kind of, the dog got back, but she didn't, got her feet run over. It was just, and then the person never stopped. They're just incredible things like that, just make it crazy. But so they learn to target curbs, they learn to target stairs. If a blind person is going to stay in like on maybe their apartment building, they'll have a little bell that they'll put on their doorknob, and the dog learns to find that and eventually learns that route. If it's where the where's the button for this crosswalk, because they're always in different places, and so they might put a target on it. And then rework that area, rework it until the team has a good idea of where it is. So they have tools that they can implement to help when they're doing it home. And stopping on down curbs. Stairs are scary for every blind person. The dogs have to go very slowly, and they stop at the top. The person feels where the step is. They'll say forward, but they have to wait for the person to put their feet down before they can go again. So it's a really slow process. It's if you have a dog that's even a little bit scared of stairs, it will always come up when they're in training, and those kinds of things like, oh, will pop up because there's pressure. They also use GPS now to track a dog's pace. What's that? And it's a pace that they can stay at. So all of our dogs start off fast and then they slow down after a bit. They want to know, can they hold that slower pace the whole time? Can they, because they're going to be putting it with the blind person who walks at a pretty set pace. They may be able to speed up a little at the beginning, but again, it's much more comfortable if you both walk the same way. I'm sure you've all had friends that walk like twice as fast as you and you're dying, or the other way around. And it's just more comfortable if you know the pace. Overhangs, we talked about, underfootings, clearance, all the rest. And that. This is in college. Yeah.
So after now that, you know, when one person gets home with the dog, what's the reward for the dog? I mean, does the dog, you know, is it clear that there's a time for the dog to relax? And
Yeah, they know the difference between harness on and harness off.
yeah,
So they would come home, they take the harness off, they do lots of body scritches and tell them how wonderful they are, what a smart dog they are. All of our dogs play. We practice play actually from the beginning. We love it if they can learn to fetch. A blind person loves it to come back to hand, because it's so much easier for them. And it's very annoying when I've seen videos of this where the lab comes back and stops there. And she's like here trying to figure out where the dog is. And it's got this smirky grin on the lab's face. It's just like very sad. So again, coming back to hand is what we're looking for. And they'll all do a lot of play. It's mostly like at the level of in the house, but we have graduates that you know, run marathons, they hike mountains. Randy Pierce in New Hampshire hiked all of the over, is it 4,000 feet mountains in one winter. The peaks in New Hampshire with his dog, the mighty Quinn. Incredible feat. And I've seen videos of that. It's just so slow, but there are graduates that do a lot of canoeing and camping and hiking. And I just saw a video of one of our graduates. He works for some tech firm, and he's trying to make sure promote access, like on your phone apps and things like that for a blind person. So he's working hard on that. It's just, they're just such a diverse. And then there are graduates that are on their, fifth dog. They're older. They walk to the mailbox and go to church, and that's pretty much it. So you have to have dogs that can meet those needs. So we have the Mighty Quinn kind of dogs, and then we also have the ones that are perfectly content to stay at home and relax. So
How long are they a service dog for one person, or is that monitored dog by dog?
dog by dog. At 10, they're usually have somebody come out in the field and make sure that the team is working well, that the dog's healthy and doing good work and keeping the person safe. Some graduates will notice things earlier on. So the dog may be 6 and all of a sudden the dog's slowing down or no longer liking the job. And so at that point, somebody from Guiding Eyes would be in contact. We have people out in the field, and their job is to go and do a home interview, find out what's going on. We have dogs that get fat, and of course, then once they start to be uncomfortable in the harness, it's not going to work for anybody. So people will, that's the point that you have to, but a lot of times it ends up being another family member that's, cleaning the plates or whatever. So.
How about when the situation where the dog might outlast their person,
Mhm.
and then does the dog get reassigned to a new person?
They-
How does that work?
It's rare that they can be reassigned after like the age of, I'm gonna say 2 or 3. It's not too far into it that they, at that point, it's like, is this dog, like, let's say there aren't any bad habits that have developed. And then you have to decide, is there somebody out there that only needs a dog to build that relationship, build that routine for 5 years, because that dog may only now work for 5 years. And so they determine that. And sometimes there are people in that category that need somebody, if they're older or not 100% healthy or whatever, and the dog's a good fit for them. I've seen it happen. But if not, there's often a family member that will adopt or a friend. And if not, then it goes back to the puppy raiser first. So we all try to keep contact with the raisers, the people that have our dogs, just so that we can make sure that we're on their mind in case the dog's going to retire.
How many dogs are currently in service right now?
It's like, I think it's over 1,000. I think I read that at the beginning. I can't remember it's the number thing for me. Yeah. But Guiding Eyes has had 10,000. And yeah, let me see if I can find that slide. Oops. You weren't doing anything, right? Just. Is it this one? Oops. Oh, I think it's one of these kind of computers. You gotta do the thumb thing, right? No, there it is, yeah. All right. Yeah. So right out in the field now, there are 1,000 Guiding Eyes dogs. Which is a lot to keep track of. And especially if you have graduates, they don't all keep track quite as well as others. They move or they, life happens, and they're just regular people. So sometimes it's not on the top of their list.
So once someone is assigned a dog, who's paired, and they go off with their dog, they can choose to stay in contact with you, or they ride off into the sunset.
Right, that's true. So as a puppy raiser, we have initial contact. So we have, usually it's like if we go to graduation.
Contact with Guiding Eyes, sorry, not with puppy raiser.
So it's, the Guiding Eyes will try do their very, very best to do everything in their power to keep contact.
to maintain whether it's trained.
Exactly.
How is it going?
Yeah.
Is the dog
And one of the,
doing
yep, and one of the incentives we have is if the dog stays in a certain weight and everything, then they get a stipend from Guiding Eyes for food and vets. So I think it's, I don't know, a couple $1,000s. It's not earth shattering, but hopefully it's enough to keep them in connection. And other than that, there are some of the graduates will take ownership of the dog. There was a controversy on this because Guiding Eyes in the past had always kept ownership of the dog, and then the blind person would take the dog. The graduate council felt that this was disrespectful to them. They wanted to have the right to be able to own the dog outright. Then they take over all the responsibilities financially, and it's their dog at that point. So it's one of those things for a puppy raiser. It was not happy news, because for us, it's really easy for them to go off into the sunset, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And of all, this is like a portion of the dogs I've raised, and I had contact with all of them. There's one, this guy right here. It's the one guy that I met him at graduation. Nice guy. That the dog and he were a perfect match. That dog is I always called him my gentleman, because I swear he'd go up to anybody and say, "Hello, my name's Dixon," and then he'd just step back. It was not, and he always laid on the floor in the flying frog position where they have their legs kicked out. He was just and this guy was very much the same. It wasn't a touchy-feely relationship, no hugs and kisses, but you could tell that they really, the pictures I have of their at graduation, and he's touching his head and checking him out, and I think the relationship was strong. It was just not what you often see. And he's never been in touch, and I have been able to send things like through Guiding Eyes, and then they try to send them or whatever, but yeah. It's a good question. So what kind of careers, if they don't make it as a guide dog, what kind of careers? Because we always try to find a career for these dogs. We've invested a lot of energy. We really want these dogs to work if they're designed to work. Not all dogs are designed to work, but one of the careers that most of our Labradors love is detection work. We work closely with the alcohol, firearms, and tobacco. I think that's a government agency. And then the Connecticut State Police, they have a dog training facility. And so a lot of the police officers will come there. They use a lot of our dogs. They really love them because they have the drive they want, and they have basically, they're pleasant to live with. Those dogs live with their people, and they're regular family pets when they're not working. And it's all sniffing and eating, a Labrador dream. So, and most of them love it. So if we have a dog that's released for bad house manners, that steals from the counter, their Connecticut State Police is like right there. That's the one I want. I want the bold one that will do anything for food, because that's the drive that you need to reach small places to sniff out whatever they're sniffing out. They do with the I think it's the alcohol ATF. They do like technology, computer, USB ports. They do things like hard drives. They do, of course, bombs. And with bombs, they have it down into different components of different kinds of bombs. So there's like one odor that the dog detects. It's not like they look for bomb, because it's sort of like looking for beef stew. It's a lot of smells go in it. So they have to have that one component. And then they do, of course, drugs. And those are the major ones, I think. Yeah.
You screen for someone to be a puppy raiser?
What we do is we meet them and chat. When we're looking for a puppy raiser, I want it to be a conversation. This is what we'll ask of you, and you need to say yay or nay. And there are ways to break it down into different components. So if there are some things that are deal breakers. So if you have somebody living in your house that is not going to follow any of the rules, that's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Or if we have really young children in a house that are not really good listeners, we've had some that work well when they're young, but they seem to drop a lot of Cheerios on the ground. So it's really tricky. We can teach them not to grab the Legos, but when it's food, it's really, really difficult. And then it's like just talking. We have people that have never raised a dog in their life. We have people that come from other kind of dog training that have a lot of background. And again, it's with our classes at the very beginning, we kind of talk about what we're going to be looking for and how to get the puppy off to a good start. The general thing that people do is too much, too soon. It's like a lot of getting to know the puppy because we are looking for a calm and settled puppy. And then we have it's a 4-hour, 6-hour something curriculum that we do. I think it's down to 4 or 5 now. It's more of a self-study. And then we get together and talk about it after. So you can look at it all and then we kind of check for understanding instead of plopping you in a room and yabbering at you for an hour. We find that people don't always comprehend that much in those environments. So yeah, so that's we are always looking for puppy raisers. It's a big job, but it's a fun one. There are different ways of doing it. It's not always like you get an 8-week-old puppy and raise it until they're 14 to 21 months. Some people will do the co-raise like Brian and I are doing, Reagan. And some people will do just start the puppies. So they'll have them from 8 weeks to 4 months. Some people don't want a puppy until they're 6 months because they work from home and they need a slightly more settled puppy. So some people do that. Our college students tend to do the older puppies because the college campus is too busy. So different ways of doing it. We try to find the best fit.
Puppy training, what use do you make of the kenneling?
We use the kennel a lot because, and the reason for that is we want these puppies to be very comfortable in their own skin, being left alone. When the puppy starts to take over your life, it's too much. There's too much attention on this puppy. And it's really hard to find that balance with your first puppy because you're so excited and everybody wants to have this guide dog at the end. So there tends to be a lot that's done early on. And it's a 1.5 years is a long time. And there's plenty of time to do a lot of it. So I forgot the question now.
The use of the kennel.
Yeah, so at my house, we use the kennel all the time at night, and Robbie's 5 months. And Brian and Reagan are practicing it a lot during the day. He works from home and she's home from school a couple of days a week. And so the puppy needs to not be the center of attention. She's really good in the house right now, but that can change in a heartbeat as she starts to find the world is more exciting or she gets bored. And that's when things get chewed or something happens. So, and then in the car, I always keep my dogs in a crate. I think it's safer. They can ride in the wheel well, but I just don't feel comfortable. I'm at the age and stage where I'm easily distracted anyway. So I don't need an additional Labrador jumping up on my ride.
Once the dog is placed with a person that's a guide dog, are there problems developed with separation anxiety? It doesn't seem like they'd ever be separated with that person.
Yeah, they do though. And most of them will continue to use the crate for a while. But like, for instance, if they're going to go out with friends to a movie, they may opt to have their friend lead them rather than take the dog. They want the dog to stay home this time because if you're in the city and you have to use public transportation, it's a little bit tricky. They're supposed to legally stop and give you rides. Uber is supposed to legally stop and give you a ride, but they don't. So sometimes they just opt not to. It's like, you've had a good day, you stay home. So giving them the flexibility to do that. So
So part of that preparation for that would occur in the 12 months of puppy raising.
Exactly. And we want to give them, like, we work really hard to keep dogs off furniture. And I can tell you like the first day that some graduates get puppies, the dog's on the bed, even though they're told that they shouldn't be on the bed because they're in this critical bonding thing, they break the rule. And at that point, it's their choice. You're not going to wreck this dog because they got on the bed. But it's easier for them to break the rule of not getting on the bed than it is the other way around. So we got, and again, it's not that difficult to keep a dog off the furniture if you just don't ever allow it. My pet dog gets on the furniture, Robbie doesn't get on the furniture. So far she hasn't. Every now and then she'll put her feet up on me when I'm on the sofa and want to come snuggle, but being the firm handler I am, I say, no way.
She got scared by the vacuum cleaner one day and left.
Yeah. She doesn't like the vacuum. All right.
With their master, how much training does the visually impaired or blind person, sorry. How much training does the person have alone and then with the dog before they're sent off into the sunset?
When a graduate applies to come to Guiding Eyes, there's a field rep that goes to their home, meets them, and does what we call a Juno walk. So they take the harness and the blind person hangs onto the harness, the graduate hangs on here, and the graduate has to do the basic motions of their walk with a pretend dog. And the pretend dog is always Juno. So they do a Juno walk to try to get an idea of the person's abilities to navigate and abilities to get around and what pace they're going to have and how quickly they pick up things and all those kinds of things. Do they have enough ability to really have a guide dog? So there are people that they tell, you need to go back to a orientation and mobility instructor and get some more training. And then sometimes it's like, all right, you're a shoo-in and we'll put you on the waiting list. And then they come to Guiding Eyes and they live in the dorms. I think it's a couple of weeks. It's changed since COVID. And they do training every single day. Third day in, they meet their dog and they make sure it's a good match. If it's not a good match, they try a different dog. So they kind of work it out that way. Nice. So you guys want to meet a dog? You guys want to take the vests off the puppies so they can greet nicely? She's sleeping finally, or is she out in the truck? Yeah, let's not get her. Although she would greet very nicely. And then if anybody's interested, seeing what the harness is.
Oh, oh, I know. If they're not identified into a stop, do you spay and neuter them before they go off? Okay.
The minute that it's determined you're not redeveloped, then you're the first thing that happens is they say, which kind of goes to what I was telling Edie about this waiting period. Because now they have 32 dogs that have to be spayed and neutered, and they're all going through the different steps of neutering or spaying and healing and all that. So there's a lot of things that go on that, other than saying that it's happening, that's not what we say. There's probably a Kong in there.
I had a high school student that was losing his vision. He could see out of the corner of his eyes.
Yeah.
And in a lot of denial as it, we started to notice when his sister and he would come to school, they'd get out of the car and he was headed in the wrong direction. That's how they knew his vision was getting much worse. And he desperately wanted a dog, but he did not want to learn a cane. And they said, until you may not.
Right,
So
right.
you must learn a cane.
Yeah. And they have to be, I think in our program it's 16, they have to be at least 16, some other programs it's 18.
He was older, he was close to 18, but then that was a big hurdle.
Yeah.
He was so resistant to the cane.
Yeah.
We didn't announce to the whole world.
Exactly,
that he
and
had
people
cane.
avoid you rather than interact.
Right.
Yes.
Anyone like? So when you drive out to New York and pick up the puppy you're gonna raise.
No, we usually do have somebody that goes down, or we have somebody already going down for another purpose, and they get puppies and bring them up, or bring them up halfway.
So there's communities all over, like you said, you run classes out of Belfast, so this happens in all different states and areas where there's somebody willing to be a hub.
Yeah, and we have retired people that just like to drive, so they love to go drive down and do a
But
trip.
as far as to hold the classes to be able to, that puppy raise, there has to be a hub of training and support. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the counter microphone one, it's made right there. We'll get up from the walks and. We have enough.
No. Hey, we haven't done it. I've 10 months. Wondered, I thought, for some reason, I thought that this was not your first. Oh, thank you.
But it's a little unstable.
Right.
This way.
Gonna go see Brett.
Pat, I have a few of those too. I don't know if that's worth it.
Yeah, I need to also give some to Hilda, so, yeah, I'd love to have some.
He's only 2 months. All the dogs in this thing.
He's still pretty balanced, so.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy too. Oh, Ellison.
You don't even have money to eat.
Do they know each other?
We're in class together.
We're in class
How many
together,
months
so
are
they
they?
we get to know each other.
Just lost, I'm not lost too. Just one lost. Okay, Kobe's the next. He's the oldest now.
Yeah.
And Robbie and Kyle son right now. Okay. He keeps changing. Get
Right, so
puppies
there
and
we
so,
go.
yeah.
Excellent. We're going to wrap up, but thanks for so much for joining us, people on Zoom, and have a good rest of your night.